So, what do we know about the ancient Judeans? Like, I'm really curious about how they wrote, how they passed along stories. That's something I have no clue, like how stories were transmitted during that time.
Well, this is one of the questions that scholars are also debating upon, but but it definitely is one of the major questions we try to understand more. And the problem is with the biblical literature, and actually with all the cultures that live, let's say, west of the Jordan River on the what is called the Levant, is that the ancient materials of writing were on leather or on papyrus, and the two materials cannot sustain the climate unless, and this is the greatest achievement that we enjoy, is that those materials could remain in desert, in very dry climate, and this is why we all enjoy the Dead Sea Scrolls and all the other findings, including papyrus. So in other places in the land of Israel, and mainly in Jerusalem, where we assume most of the biblical literature was written and collected to, there are no ancient remains. And so the question of how things were written and copied and transmitted is really something that our ability as scholars to learn about it is from other ancient archives in the ancient Near East, where the written materials were not exposable. So to your question, we have only, when it comes to the Hebrew Bible, we have some clues within the biblical literature that we can learn from, but mostly we assume that the Hebrew Bible holds traditions that were transmitted first orally and over time in written format, and that on a long process they came to be what we now read in the Bible.
Hmm.
But these are, in most of the processes are processes we have to assume. And nevertheless, we do have traces, and I would even say quite a lot of traces to validate the fact that this is an ancient culture and um, ancient text.
And I guess like the other complicated thing is like is knowing like who could actually read. And so I'm curious about
Mhm.
like, and it's very interesting to me as I think about from what I know about the Judean people and the Israelites, about the groups of people, the Levites, or those that were in charge of kind of writing things down and
Mhm.
then communicating those texts to the people. And I'm curious about like those group of people. Do we know anything about those people who were like the writers, the people who were transmitting this information to the people? And also like how that might relate to other ancient cultures at the time. Did those cultures also have like a Levitical tribe?
Yeah, and if and at least they would have scribal circles that are responsible to writing traditions, writing other material sources. Yeah, we know, and again, we are in a complicated situation. There is um, no findings, no real findings of school of scribes within Israel. But still, we know about scribal schools or schools for scribes in the ancient Near East, and we try to learn from that. There are a lot of quite new uh, studies done on this issue of scribal culture or scribal circles and their work, and this is really of interest. The kind of interesting thing and kind of riddles you have to find out is that you have to look at the materials that you have in the Bible and to see how can you find kind of remnants of scribal activity within this literature, which is now in of course, edited format. And you have to be very sensitive to trying to understand what could be the stages of growth of the literature. But this is complicated. It is complicated.
Hey, thank you so much for checking out this video clip from the Dogado podcast. To get more videos like this, simply subscribe here on YouTube. You can also download the full episode of each show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or your favorite podcast player. Take care.